I can't cope with this. Those are the words that most people tell me when I first meet them. They're not looking for a strategy. They're not looking for tips and tricks. They're drowning and they're looking for relief. They are wondering deep in their soul, how do I keep up with my kids and everything that they have going? How do I work full time? How do I keep answering the phone when my parents don't understand technology anymore? How do I manage all of these things without drowning myself? This is a normal physiological response. It's a normal brain response. Our brains were designed to help us to bring things down and ask survival questions when we are overwhelmed. And that's what that is. It's not anything but a survival statement. I can't cope. When you find yourself thinking, I just need to get through with this, I just need to keep going, that isn't you avoiding or failing. It is your brain trying to protect you. For people who are high-functioning adults, coping works for a long time. You fix the problem when it arises, you put out the fire at 2 a.m. when you get the phone call, you keep all the plates spinning in the air, you do great at work, you do great at home, you're getting the kids to soccer, you're doing everything. And culturally, that's what we've been taught to do. In America, we are not well prepared for the death and dying process. The phase between retirement and death is something that we have no structure for. There are some books that are trying to help. There's lots of people on the internet with tips and tricks of, how to help fix a singular problem that you're finding with your mom who has dementia. There are support groups everywhere, but largely we're flying blind in those years. Families do what they can in those years with the tools that they have, and there aren't many of them. Over time, the cost of coping gets exponentially larger. It costs money through rushed decisions, duplicated efforts. It costs time because you're running fire drills all the time and putting out small fires and trying to get from one responsibility to the other and think about what you're going to make for dinner at the same time. The longer that planning is delayed, the more decisions are made under pressure, and pressure changes everything. At some point, we start asking a really strange question that's really kind of fascinating to me. We start asking, why is managing our parents' aging journey more difficult than parenting our children? These are grown adults that we're talking about. And here's an interesting concept that I ran across a day or two ago, and I wanted to share with you. From birth until retirement, there is socially acceptable structures in place. For instance, our children, when they enter the school system in elementary school, have regimented, protected spaces where they are given hardly any freedom at all. We don't leave them home alone. They don't get recess alone. They are very, very rarely alone in a safe and enclosed bubble where they can learn. As they progress to middle school, they're given smaller, bite-sized pieces of autonomy. For instance, they have 5-minute passing periods between classes in junior high. You might leave them home alone for a couple of minutes while you run to get some milk at the store. Then they graduate and they move on to high school, and we start allowing them to drive. We allow them to stay out late with just their friends and no adult supervision. They travel to games and they are busy, but they have some controlled autonomy. And then college, right before they step into adulthood, it is their first time without parents. And that is another institutionalized, protected space where they are able to grow with some structure, leaving mom and dad behind. Then when you step into your career, most careers have a logical progression that requires a certain number of years and years of experience and growth and having a strong track record that is linear to be able to go through it. However, we actually talked about this at dinner tonight. When you retire, you are suddenly cast into the only space in your life where there is no structure. There is no socially accepted progress or progression through that space. There is no unraveling or bringing back the autonomy from wide open to more and more structured as it is needed. I want to be really clear here. There's no progression after retirement. There's no gentle handoffs, and there is no designed, controlled autonomy. Autonomy doesn't taper off as it should. Instead, it collapses, whether that is an injury like a fall, or perhaps it is a diagnosis like cancer. Suddenly, our adult parents are thrust into a free fall because autonomy didn't taper. Overnight, you as the adult child may be asked to manage finances that have not been well managed in a decade. You're asked to drop everything and sit at the hospital with them. You're asked to help with logistical plans of getting them to doctor's appointments because they're not safe to drive anymore. This season does not feel held because there's absolutely no structure. It is unsustainable. It is chaotic. And too many people have to carry this alone. I'd like to tell you a story at this point about my in-laws, Don and Sandy. Some of you may know, some of you may not, that we live in a multi-generational home. Don and Sandy live with my husband, Greg, and I, our two youngest children, Max and Leo, and occasionally our son, Will. When Don and Sandy were 78, they were doing fantastic. They walk 1.5 miles every day. They went jeeping on the weekends with their friends. They lunched, they played, they did all of the things that have a very full life. But they were watching their friends ask some really tough questions in the quietness of their lunches or after church. They were asking, "We don't know what to do. What are you going to do? How are we going to do this? How do we manage this?" And every one of them were quite lost. Don and Sandy did not want that to be their story. Don and Sandy were not just observant. They also are planners. After watching their friends struggle and not be able to give any clear answers, but I hope that works out for you, they decided that they didn't want that to be a part of their story. So on our next Zoom call, they brought an idea to us. They said, "We're not getting any younger. Can we talk about what comes next?" That was a transformational question. That was a miracle. We were able to talk about the aging process and what it would look like for them to act before it was necessary. It was not a crisis conversation. It was not fear-based. It was a choice, and one that we could do together. That was the golden years speaking. What followed wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fast, but it was methodical and well thought out as we designed a structure to help hold them in their later years. Not today, but in the future. All of us went through our homes. Don and Sandy worked about 2 hours a day. I worked more hours on the weekend so that we were able to sell both houses and move in together. Not saying that everybody has to do this. This is what worked best for our family. We all, but especially them, sorted through decades of life. They acknowledged, specifically Don and Sandy, acknowledged the memories, acknowledged the season of their life that it represented, and then they let it go. They took load after load after load to Goodwill. They donated. They asked friends and families who were just starting out with little kids if they wanted to come shopping in their house so that they would be able to let go well and move on to the next adventure. Eventually, we sold both houses and moved into a house that had a little casita on the end of it. We did not do this because their independence was gone. Instead, We did it because we were creating structure for the remaining living years that they had. A lot of their friends approach them and say, "Why did you give up your independence? Now you're stuck to live with your daughter-in-law." That's me. Why would you do this? And they say all the time, it's because we were ready for a new adventure and we wanted to stop feeling afraid. And that was part of our conversation at dinner tonight. They both said, "I'm not afraid anymore of something bad happening because I know that you guys are right there." They go in the basement and they play ping pong with the boys. They still beat the boys in ping pong. We have dinner every night. We are integrating them into our lives so that we can be there and be a cohesive family unit. They still go to church every week. We go to separate churches. We have not only a multi-generational family, we have an interdenominational family, which really is a beautiful thing if you learn how to embrace it. They are still fully themselves. They still go play pool with their friends over here on this side of the mountains. But this is a part most people have not been shown how to do yet. I need to say something that might be really hard to hear. In fact, it might make you angry at me. But the goal of the golden years is not to cling to independence at all cost. It is to reshape independence so it can last through your aging years. When families wait until the golden hours before dying, until crisis, illness, visible frailty, or a traumatic car accident happens, the people we love and are trying to protect their independence are actually removed from the planning process. Everything becomes urgent. Decisions are made because it's the only option that we have. We just have to get them someplace safe. It is corrective and it feels punitive instead of collaborative. When structure starts early, while vitality and voice are still present, planning becomes humane. We can clean out the basement together. We can talk about what it looks like to live in a multi-generational home. We can preserve dignity. Structure doesn't replace emotion. It creates room for it. One of the saddest things that I see in the hospital setting is when there is a crisis, the kids tend to say out loud to me as the nurse in the hallway, "I just need to shut off my emotions and stop crying and just go take care of business." Actually, that's the moment where you need to be able to have the emotions and deal with what is going on in your soul and in your family. If you build the structure before you need it, that's exactly what can happen. You can be present and there in that moment with them instead of turning off the emotions and going and doing logistical things. Your mind will not make good decisions in that moment, and your family needs you to be present. It's so important to build that structure before you need it. Some of you are saying at this moment, "Stephanie, slow down. I am not ready to start taking on my parents. I don't have enough bandwidth," and they're fine. That's okay. You can be in that space. All I'm asking is that we start to reframe the conversation in a way that creates meaning and understanding that putting things off until the last minute may not be the best option. The invitation is just to reframe your thinking and understand that that question, that statement that we were talking about at the very beginning of "I can't cope with this," can actually come off of your shoulders and your whole being feel better when you actually have a structure in place to be able to hold your life. Slowly, as I work with people, I see them frequently, whether that is in the hospital setting or it is in my business, where they transition from "how do I cope" to "what does structure look like for my family?" Because the structure that happens for my family is not the same that happens for you. The structure that you need is going to look very, very different, and I honor that. But I need you to know that the strain that you feel, that "how do I cope" thing, is not a you problem. It's a structure problem. It's a problem of not having the structure to be able to hold everything that you're carrying. Stop blaming yourself. Stop forcing yourself to smile and put on the happy face and go and do things that you just don't have the emotional capacity to do. If we build structure, you'll have that support because you're not failing. Your stage needs structure. The golden years are the planning years. The golden hours are where the planning years protect dignity. The golden hours are really what we're trying to preserve. We are trying to enable you when that moment comes where you might have had to say, I have to turn off my emotion and take care of business, that you don't have to do that. That is why we are here. The work we do now, when they don't need it, helps determine which of those two stories that we get later. And this space exists for that work. Not urgency, not fear, not tips and tricks, not a collective support group of people who are all having to put their emotions aside to take care of business. We are managing with dignity and respect the living years. We're handling those with intention and with care and respect for a life and for a life cycle that we were never taught how to navigate. So let's navigate this together. If there's something specific that you would like me to make a video on, I would love for you to put it in the comments. I'd love for you to message me. I'd love for you to connect with me so that I can help you see how much I can take off of your mental load, how much I can take off your plate so that you can get back to the business of living.